Hello, everybody. My name's Ning. I'm here again to give you a free tip to help you achieve success in the biology classroom quickly and efficiently. Okay, so before we get to that, I got a quick story to share with you. And it's a story about how I almost once failed a final exam. Okay, so let's get into it. So I was taking a class about plant growth and function during one of my graduate years at Cornell. And I'm strolling up to the final. I had studied all that and I had been doing well in the class. And I stroll up to the classroom where the final exam was. I take a seat and people around me are doing what they normally do at a final exam. And you know what I'm talking about. They're sitting around and they're like, "Oh, did you study this? Oh, yes, I studied that." They're like talking and they're like, "Oh, oh my God, do I know that?" They're going over this and that, and they're kind of doing what I call pre-test mode. And I'm sitting there, I'm zenning out, I'm getting in the zone, I'm getting ready to dominate that test. And I notice something weird. I look around and I notice that I don't recognize any of the other students. So I asked one of the dudes, I'm like, "Hey, this is Plants 242, right?" And he says, "No, this is blah, 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 something else," that it wasn't plants. And I was like, "Oh, shit." Excuse my language. I'm like, "Oh, and I look at my clock. It's about 5 minutes before the final exam starts." I get up. I walk down the hall. I'm more like speed walk, power walk down the hall, and I can't find any classrooms with the same people that I took class with. And at this point, I'm starting to panic a little bit because I'm about to miss my final exam, and if I do, there ain't no makeup, so I'd be pretty screwed. So I think to myself, okay, what do? Maybe I can run to the library, check the slides on one of the computers, and see where the actual test was. So I sprint to the library. I have my pencils and my stuff with me. I get in the library, I hop on one of the computers, I search the course website, and the slides on that website were posted from a year ago. And the classroom posted was the exact classroom that I had gone to. So that was of no help. I find the professor's number, I call it, no answer. I call each of the TAs, no answer. I call two of my friends who I knew were in the class, no answer. And by this point, it was already past the time that the test would have started. So now I'm in full freakout mode. I'm like, "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit." Excuse my language again. And I think to myself, now what do I do? Okay. And the classrooms at Cornell were organized into what they call quads, which is pretty common for universities. And I knew the test was in the agriculture quad. And I think to myself, okay, it's got to be in one of these buildings somewhere. There's maybe 6, 7 buildings. So my brilliant idea is to start sprinting through every single hall of every single building, all 3 floors, to try to find the classroom. I went through maybe 4 or 5 buildings, full on sprinting, and thank God I was a runner. But I was like a really good runner back then. Not really good, but like enough to sustain this running bout. And I finally, after 15 minutes of running through classrooms, sprinting through buildings, and having people look at me like I was a whack job, I stumble upon the classroom where they were having the exam. I walk in, drenched in sweat, huffing and puffing, completely out of breath. All the students stop, look up at me. As I walk in, the professor looks at me and is just like, I give him a shrug like, "What are you going to do?" Take my exam, sit down, and proceed to dominate and get an A+ in the class. So the reason I tell this story is because it shows I had to use something called state control to get such a good result after such a wild, hectic lead up. If I wasn't able to control my emotional state after I sat down and started that exam, I would have been all frazzled, I would have been stressed out, and like many other students, I would just kind of like do poorly because of that stress. And I want to let you know that when you sit down to take a test, there's two emotional states that will really affect you, either positively or negatively. One emotional state is being stressed out, having cortisol course through your system. Ooh, I'm a poet. And this is a negative thing, okay? So whenever you're stressed out, you're going to do worse. You're going to perform worse. Whenever you're worrying about, oh, what am I going to get? If I don't do well, I'm not going to get the grade I'm going to get. I'm not going to get a med school. I'm not going to blah, 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 blah. If you're worrying about all this, stress is coursing. Cortisol is just blowing your system up, and you're going to do worse than you could do if you weren't stressed. And the other emotion that you can feel while taking tests is focus. Focus, think of Michael Jordan, NBA playoffs level focus. Okay, if you're focused, that is going to be a positive emotional state. That's going to help you achieve better. Okay, so how do we differentiate, or how do we put ourselves in a state of focus as opposed to a state of stress? How, after all that stressful running around, was I able to sit down, completely switch? I'm sorry, I can't snap with my left hand. Completely switch my emotional state from one of stress to focus to be able to dominate this final exam. One of my tactics that I use when I don't have the wrong classroom for an exam is I like to sit down before the exam and I like to put in my earbuds and listen to pump up music, just like someone who right before a big sports game or going to the gym would. Okay, music that puts me in a state, pumps my adrenaline up and gets me ready to be like, okay, time to kick ass, time to focus. Okay, that is one of my tips for putting myself in an emotional state of focus, as opposed to an emotional state of stress. Okay, so use this tip for yourself. Make sure you avoid things that stress you out right before an exam, and do things that will put you in a state of focus. Okay. So if you like this tip, if you want more tips like this, free tips that I'm just going to put on YouTube every day, make sure you click the subscribe button, click the like button, whatever, share this video, whatever, go to town, okay? So good luck and peace out.